Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It is once again me, Zach, here today with another tier list for all of you fine gamers out there. We are finished with the Barony tier list series for the moment. There's only a couple more that I may want to do in the future. They're mostly for fun, more than anything, so they aren't high priority. And before I start working on the DRG tier list again, I wanted to kind of stop off in Skyrim land for a little bit and record a couple tier lists about this kind of stuff to sort of celebrate the fact that Chandler has been putting out his Skyrim Let's Play recently. That has recently started, and that in and of itself is kind of a general celebration of reaching 500 subs. So thank you guys, and I hope you enjoy these tier lists. They are a little bit less serious because Skyrim is, of course, a single-player game, and is a game that's very figured out by most people, so pretty much anything can be usable. Anything can be busted in the right hands, right? So don't take this crazy seriously, but this would be my rating of the Daedric artifacts within the hit video game Skyrim. Any version of it that you might be playing. So starting off pretty strong here, we've got Azura's Star. I'm going to put it into good category for now as we talk about it, and I will move it up or down as necessary. Now, Azura's Star is an interesting one. It's definitely one of the old artifacts. It's been around for quite a while. You get it as a reward for completing the Black Star quest, which is a pretty decent little quest line. And what makes it interesting is both that it is a reusable soul gem, which is cool on its face, because that can save you a lot of money and time and effort and resources in the long run. But in addition, when you complete the quest, you get to choose whether it traps only white souls or white and black souls. Now, I think that most people at this point who play enchanting semi-seriously are going to definitely argue that quote-unquote corrupting the star, turning it into the black star, is definitely the superior way to play, and I would generally agree. If you are using it for the Black Star ability that allows you to trap sentient souls as well as non-sentient souls, this is absolutely up somewhere in this category. I'm going to say, honestly, probably too good. Part of the reason I'm putting it into probably too good instead of only incredible is mostly the fact that it outshines itself, which is impressive. Not many items can say that they outshine most other things within their own category, and simultaneously outshine also their own self in the process. But Azura's Star does manage it, because locking yourself to only being able to trap white souls with Azura's Star really knocks it down a peg or two. It's still very useful, but if you're wanting the most powerful enchants you can get, then you want to go for the most powerful soul gem you can get. And that is Azura's Star, but it's specifically the black version of Azura's Star. So, that's pretty much it. It's a relatively simple item, despite everything, but whoo buddy is the Black Star version strong. I wish there were two images of... Oh my god, there are. Holy crap, I didn't even look at that. Wow, looky there, guys. So, black one goes here, white one goes here. It is wildly outshone by its twin, but it's still good. Like, to be super clear here, if you were to complete the quest following Azura's side of the equation, or at least the follower of Azura's side of the quest line, and you only, in quotes, got access to the greater white gem, or white souls, it's still quite good. It's still very usable. It can still recharge your weapons and stuff. It's great for all that kind of thing. It's just a simple matter of, if you are playing heavily into enchanting and it's something you want to be really serious about, you probably just want to go straight for Black Souls 9 times out of 10. Next up we have Dawnbreaker. We're putting that one in good for the moment again. This weapon is pretty interesting. You get it for completing the Break of Dawn quest. Everybody knows about this quest, of course. Everybody has heard the screaming. This quest line, I would like to point out here, on its own, independent of the weapon, is really valuable because you get a lot of gold out of it, for whatever reason. But the item itself, which is a one-handed sword, is pretty decent. The special effect of it is basically, it deals more damage to undead, which is good because you may not be aware of this. I'm going to just kind of key you into a little-known fact about Skyrim, and that is that there are a handful of Draugr in it. And Draugr do count as undead. So, pretty reliable bonus damage. In addition, it lights enemies on fire. So, if you happen to, fight anything with skin, it's probably going to be pretty useful. Even things without skin burn. Overall, it's not going to be the kind of weapon that's going to carry you into, like, the hyper late game necessarily. Of course, you can eventually create weapons that are more powerful than pretty much any of the Daedric artifacts by the end, but that requires a lot of enchanting and stuff, so I would say Dawnbreaker probably does deserve to be kind of in these two categories. I'm going to lean towards good for a couple reasons. One, obviously, it's a one-handed sword, so it is relatively flexible. Alright? Any kind of like one-handed build makes use of this, and there are quite a few one-handed builds, because maybe you're doing dual wielding, maybe you're doing sword and board, anything like that, you're going to be quite good. Even if you're playing as a mage, you might have an extra hand open to use for wielding Dawnbreaker. The only playstyles that don't really benefit from it are going to be like pure archer builds, and again, little known fact, pretty good in Skyrim, admittedly, or two-handed weapon users. So it's not super restricted to any particular playstyle, which is nice, but on the other hand, there's a lot of competition for one-handed weapons. Even just on this list, there's a couple. So, it can be a little bit tricky to fit this one in sometimes. However, if you are a sword boy or you go for this questline early, Dawnbreaker is pretty fantastic throughout most of the game, I would say. Early game, it's definitely in the incredible category. Towards the mid to late game, it settles down into good. It's never bad, is really the key here. You're never going to be like, ah, damn, I brought Dawnbreaker instead of my normal iron sword. So I can't really shit on it too hard. Next up, we have the Ebony Blade. Again, I'm going to put that into the sort of good category until we talk about it. It's a two-handed sword, and it is a reward for completing the Whispering Door, which is a very ominous name, by the way. So this one is interesting because it has a scaling effect, but it's also kind of buggy. So let's talk about the scaling effect first. Reading this directly off the wiki for you guys, for every 2 such characters killed, the weapon increases in power, adding 2 to the strength of the absorb health effect that it has, up to the maximum of 30. So it starts at 10 points of health absorb whenever you hit an enemy, and that's 10 health per enemy hit, which, you know, is kind of cool. This is pretty interesting. I mean, getting it up to the maximum of 30, it takes a lot, actually. Because you have to kill 2 characters, and they have to be friendly to you. You have to kill 2 friendly characters per 2 points added to the strength, and you need 20 to max out the absorb health effect, right? Which is like, feels like a lot of characters to kill just to get 30 health absorb, which you could just enchant onto a weapon. In addition, it is a two-handed weapon, which heavily limits what sorts of playstyles are really going to benefit from the weapon. In addition, the bugs, alright, this is where it gets weird, because it levels up your two-handed, but benefits from one-handed. Now, this has been fixed in a patch, but just be aware, make sure you're playing on a patched version, because otherwise you're going to have a bad time with this one, as you level up your two-handed, but none of your perks increase your damage. Regardless, it's patched, it's not as buggy anymore, but it feels very expensive to upgrade. And the effect is not anything too crazy. I mean, basically 30 extra damage, as well as healing you for 30 whenever you hit with it, is not terrible. But again, the investment, right? I feel like this can definitely get into the good category if you really invest time into it, but I'm going to put it into pretty mid because I do feel like it is heavily limited in how many people are going to want to play with it, as well as it being limited by the amount of time investment and general effort required to wrangle it into a decent position, right? Comparing it to Dawnbreaker straight up, Dawnbreaker is just more versatile, as well as, of course, having a constantly useful set of effects, as opposed to one that is kind of meh starting off, you know? Moving right along, though, we have another Ebony item. We have the Ebony Mail. You get this for completing Boethiah's Calling. So we'll put that there for now and talk about what it does. It's kind of a weird one. It's heavy armor that is enchanted with a muffle effect. So it's for sneaking, but also makes you tanky as fuck, which is, admittedly, that's cool, right? That's kind of a neat combination you don't usually see. But is it supremely valuable to most people undertaking that playstyle? Probably not. It can be a nice bonus, but it's not really what you're here for, you know, as a heavy armor guy. In addition, nearby enemies take 5 poison damage per second. Now, the poison damage is kind of weak. I mean, 5 damage, and it's poison damage, which I don't know exactly how many enemies are resistant to that or immune to it, but it can't be incredible, right? Overall, it's not terrible, but I am going to say that it's just here. It's just not crazy good. It's not trash. I mean, it's still ebony armor, which is cool, and it's ebony armor that might be useful for somebody who wants to play stealthier, but also do heavy armor shenanigans. Fair enough. I mean, the poison damage is pretty bad, but it is poison damage, so I guess that's neat. I don't know. It's not quite trash. I don't think there'll be much in the trash category, to be honest with you. But it isn't good. I mean, like, let's be super honest here. The next up is one of the ones I actually really like from Skyrim. Most of these, I mean, I love Azura Star, but most of these other ones, just not really my thing. But next we're talking about the Mace of Molag Bal. This one gets a little bit of a bad rap for a couple reasons. One is it's fucking gigantic. This shit takes up half your screen when you use it. It is huge. But the other reason is because it can be a little bit, I don't know, a little bit painful early on because it runs out of enchanting juice pretty quickly. It runs out of charges pretty fast. And in addition to this, if I remember right, it's one of the ones that can't be upgraded. Or it's upgraded with Ebony or something weird. Either way, we're not going to even worry about that right now. We're talking about the base stats here. The biggest weakness is that it does run out of enchantment pretty quickly. But what does that enchantment do? That's an important question. What it does is damages your stamina, or sorry, the enemy's stamina and magicka by 25. It also will steal the soul of any enemy that it hits, assuming you have a soul gem big enough, and as long as they die within 3 seconds of being hit with it. If you're using it as your main weapon, that's definitely going to happen. As the wiki points out here, if you pair this with Azura Star, it's pretty efficient because you kill one thing and you get its soul and you instantly use that to recharge it and then you're good forever, basically. Before that point, though, it can be painful to constantly have to get soul gems, fill them with the mace, and then recharge the mace itself. And of course, without the enchantment, it's not incredible. It's a fine mace, but it's nothing too special. I'm going to say that this one goes in the good category, but it's towards the bottom. I could see people putting this in pretty mid. I think it gets a harsh treatment by a lot of Skyrim fans, though. I think that it's actually pretty fun. Draining stamina is mostly worthless, of course, but draining magicka can be nice. And the fact that it's an auto soul steal can be pretty handy early on, honestly. It's one less thing to think about for a kind of battle mage playstyle. You don't have to worry about switching to a spell to steal a soul. You just hit them with the Mace of Molag Bal. It's also not a crazy difficult quest line. It's the House of Horrors. I don't think I mentioned that at the beginning. Which isn't too crazy difficult, and the rewards are okay. You get a couple of neat things out of it. But I can't, in good conscience, put it any higher than this, because comparing it to Dawnbreaker is not really fair. Dawnbreaker is way better than the Mace, for sure. But if we're talking about like a gradient here within each tier, this is down here, and doesn't go any higher or lower based off of when it is in the game. I will say, if you have one of the Azura Star variants, it is very solidly in good tier, because you have that enchantment forever, but this sword is so good early on. So just keep in mind, big gap between them. Next up, we get the Masque of Clavicus Viel. Alright, put him in the good category for now. Now, the Masque is, well, I'm going to be super honest with you guys, it has really fallen far since some of the older Elder Scrolls games. It's just not that great. It's heavy armor, which is kind of mid. Based off of its bonuses, it feels like it really shouldn't be heavy armor. And the bonuses it gives are pretty bad. Prices are 20% better, speech is increased by 10 points, and magicka regenerates 5% faster? Not good. Let's just say that. Let's leave it at that. You complete the quest, A Daedra's Best Friend, for this, and there is an option to get a different item instead of the Masque, and I guess we can talk about that right now. But before we move on to the axe, we'll put this where it belongs, which is at the bottom of pretty mid. Given the option between the two ebony items or this, I'm picking either of the two ebony items. I mean, the sword is at least cool, right? And the mail is kind of interesting, you know? This, you put this on to sell things, and then you take it off and never look at it again. That doesn't feel great. So next up, we've got the Masque of Clavicus Viel, which I had to kind of look for in this list because my eyes went sideways for a moment there. This is the Rueful Axe, which you can get by doing a Daedra's Best Friend, same as the Masque, but you have to make a specific choice through there to get this one. So in order to get the axe, all you have to do is kill a dog. Which isn't very cool. That's real trash tier material. No, I'm just kidding. Let's talk about what it actually does. It's a two-handed axe. It's a unique battle axe, specifically. And it has an enchantment that deals 20 points of stamina damage, which I had to read 3 times because I really thought I was missing something, and I had forgotten what it does. This is trash. This is actual garbage. First off, as I noted with the Mace of Molag Bal, draining stamina is not very important. Draining magicka and soul binding, or soul trapping I should say, sorry, is what keeps the Mace of Molag Bal at the very bottom of good tier, or at the very top of pretty mid. Damaging purely stamina only for 20 points on a weapon that is two-handed, that's not good, guys. That's bad. I would argue that's atrocious, even. Arguably one of the worst weapons on this list, I would say, frankly speaking. But next up, we've got one that's at least a little bit fun. And that is Mehrunes Razor. That one. The stabby one. You get this unique dagger for completing the Pieces of the Past quest. A lot of dramatic quest names. Very good stuff. Mehrunes Razor is unique in the sense that it has a 1.98% chance to instantly kill any opponent, except 2. And that's interesting, at least. It's almost a 2% chance to kill anyone. I mean, that has value, right? That can be fun. I do think that fun factors into the placements of these a little bit. And to that end, I am going to put this slightly above the Mace of Molag Bal. The dagger is probably the most fun you can have with gambling outside of actually losing your house, wife, and kids, right? And that's pretty cool. The only enemies you can't kill are Miraak and Karstag. So who cares, right? Like, that's fine. Overall, it's pretty cool. Is it very good in the sort of mid to late game? I mean, it depends on how lucky you are, right? If only luck was still a stat in these games, still an attribute, then you'd be able to bump that up and one-tap everybody. Either way, for pure fun factor, for pure uniqueness, in a sense, we'll leave it pretty much exactly in the middle of the tier list. If I had to choose personally, I'd pick the Mace of Molag Bal over at any time, but I get it, you know? The rush of the 2%. The next one, though, we're finally getting back to some really, really, really good options here. And I don't think that I need to even put this in good for very long before I move it into incredible. I really can't quite put it into probably too good. I mean, maybe. I could see somebody putting it into probably too good, but I don't think it's too good. I think it's just incredible, right? This is the Oghma Infinium, which is a reward for completing Discerning the Transmundane, which is, again, fantastic naming. 10 out of 10. Whoever named the quests at Bethesda, you should demand a raise. Unionize. Get a raise. What this will do is give a permanent 5-point boost to all skills related to one of the 3 Guardian constellations. Warrior, Mage, or Thief. Pretty straightforward stuff. Permanent 5 points to your skills. As many people are aware, you wait until you're around like level 95 in a bunch of your skills, and then you just read this and you complete all of them. And it's a great time and everybody's happy. But even if you don't do that, just wait until you're high level in a couple of your skills and it starts getting tedious to level them, and then just slap this bad boy in. Overall, this is one of those ones that is kind of a must-have for almost any playthrough, which is something that you'll see about any of the ones that land in these top 2 categories. Although we're getting into the slim pickings territory here at this point. I would definitely say that these 3 are the best. And actually, since we're being granular about our tier list here, Oghma's at the top. I think it is probably the second best Daedric artifact in the game, in terms of general usefulness. Next up is one of my favorites that I think is also somewhat underrated, and that is the Ring of Namira. Now, the Ring of Namira is interesting. You get it after completing the Taste of Death. Have I said that every single one of these is interesting? Do I have a problem? We're not going to talk about it. So, you get this as a reward for completing the Taste of Death quest line, which of course causes you to become a dirty, filthy cannibal monster, which big fan of cannibals here in this house. We stan a cannibal. The Ring of Namira allows you to eat corpses and gain plus 50 health and plus 50% health regen for, I think it's like 10 minutes or so? Might be longer or shorter. Either way. After eating them. And in addition to that, gives you a pretty sizable 50-point stamina boost when you're just wearing the ring around. Now, what is cool about the Ring of Namira is a couple of things. One, you only have to equip it when you want to eat someone. And removing the ring does not remove the bonus effect you get from eating a corpse. So, you can enchant a really powerful ring that gives you like plus 8 billion stats in everything, as you do. And then whenever you find a body that looks particularly munchable, you slap on the Ring of Namira, and then slide on over. There's a neat little cutscene. You eat the person, take the ring off, go about your business. No big deal, right? Early on, though, 50 points of stamina is nothing to sneeze at, especially if you happen to be playing something like a mage that can't really invest too many points into their stamina. Are there better options for a mage in terms of rings? There's a handful, but nothing that gives you, 50 stam and 50 health with extra health regen for such an easy quest line to do. It is very straightforward, very simple. Just kill some Draugr and then trick a man into following you. We've all been there, right? Overall, I do think this belongs in the good category, and I would actually personally put it above either of these two. Again, I think that people are a little bit harsh on the Ring of Namira. I think that there's a little bit of unnecessary hatred aimed at it. So, it is what it is. Next up, we're going to there's another ring. We're going to skip over that ring for now. and we're going to talk about the Sanguine Rose instead, and I have reasons for this that we will get to. The Sanguine Rose is awarded for completing a Night to Remember, which is one of the more fun Daedric quest lines. Most of them I think are okay or at least fine, but a Night to Remember is fun, at least. And I do think that the Sanguine Rose is actually pretty good. I would even argue that it's incredible. I wouldn't say it's mind-blowingly incredible. It's pretty even with Azura's Star here. But what it does is it summons a level Dremora to fight for you for 60 seconds. Now, that is a perfectly reasonable length of time to have a Dremora active. And it is nice to be able to have a Dremora summon, even if you're not big into Conjuration. If you're playing as a melee boy or a ranger boy and not touching magic, or maybe you're doing like illusion magic or restoration focused and you just don't care about Conjuration, or maybe you just hate conjuring things, but you would still like to have the ability for some reason, Sanguine Rose is right there for you. And it's not that hard to get, frankly. The quest line is not very difficult. So it's just a pretty solid reward overall. Does it fall off a little bit late game? I think so. But it's still pretty nice, and you don't expend any of your own resources to summon it. So if you are a mage, and you're not doing any crazy, like, reduce mana cost shenanigans, it can be nice to have just a click and summon move that doesn't cost you magicka and only costs you time. Overall, decent. Pretty good. Next up, we have the Ring. The Ring of Hircine and the Savior's Hide are both rewards for the Ill Met by Moonlight. Once again, great quest name. 10 out of 10. Which, you know, you get some options, you get some choices here, but you can actually get both through an exploit. I'm not going to explain all of that. That's really not what we're here for. But I will tell you the normal way to get both of these. So, starting with the Ring, if you help Sinding is quite the name, during the quest, rather than murdering him, you get the Ring. The Ring gives you unlimited werewolf transformations per day, if you're already a werewolf. This is, I'm just gonna say it, this is the bottom of pretty mid-tier. If you're really big into werewolves, it's fine. But it's not even all that necessary, because there's really no penalty to just waiting until the next day. And it competes for, you know, your ring slot, which is pretty valuable, all things considered. In addition to that, you have to be a werewolf to use it. If it gave you like a werewolf transformation if you weren't one already, that might be kind of cool, but it doesn't. So overall, it's pretty mid. It's not quite trash, because I know there are people out there who love the werewolf form. They have, statistically, you guys gotta exist out there somewhere, alright? And this is probably really fun for them. And I'm not gonna knock that playstyle entirely. And in that case, maybe you could switch on to the Ring of Hircine, transform a bunch, switch back to something else when you don't want to be a werewolf anymore. Fair enough. But even compared to the Savior's Hide, it's just pretty bad. Savior's Hide is what you get if you kill Sinding at the end of the quest line. Alright? It is a light armor cuirass, which is like a chestplate, but in fancy speak. What this does, other than just being a pretty decent light armor chestplate, is it increases your magic resistance by 15% and your poison resistance by 50%. The poison resist is bad. It's not good. This, we're going to put it up here. And this is a very, I don't know if I agree with myself here, but magic resistance is really nice to have because it allows you to resist a lot of the most frightening effects in the base game. And if you're playing in a modded area, or in a modded setting, I should say, I will note, magic resistance is pretty nice to have. So if you happen to be going through this questline anyway, picking up the chestplate is just good. Also, you don't have to be a werewolf for it, so that's pretty nice too. But like I said, the poison resist, worthless. Magic resistance, too low to be anything above good tier, for sure. It's honestly, the more that I put stuff into the good tier, the more I'm thinking Dawnbreaker should be moved up. And in fact, I'm just going to make that decision now. Because it feels a lot better to use this than most of these. There are some fun things you can do with the Savior's Hide. You can get your magic resistance stupidly high when playing as a Breton and stuff like that. And it can be helpful when dealing with certain enemies and whatnot. So I'm not entirely trashing it, but, you know, it ain't great. So, the next one is the Skeleton Key. So, this one is, once again, gotta say it, pretty interesting. What it does is it's an unbreakable lockpick. That's it. You get it during the Thieves Guild quest Blindsided, but you lose it at the end of the... Well, I don't remember exactly, but you lose it during the Thieves Guild. You don't get to keep it. So you have to stop advancing in the Thieves Guild quest to keep this key on you. If you do keep this key, I will say this much. It's pretty good. I wouldn't say it's incredible, but I will put it at the top of good. It's definitely better than these other options, but it's not as nearly as good as like any of these. Having infinite lockpicks sounds better than it is, because lockpicks are pretty easy to get. You're drowning in them by the end of the game, in most cases. But it is still a bummer, because you do have to stop the Thieves Guild quest line. And if you are a thief guy who would benefit from having infinite unbreakable lockpicks, you probably want to keep going in the Thieves Guild. And if you are a person who doesn't want to have to use like a ton of lockpicks to get into something, then you're probably not a thief, because you're worried about breaking your lockpicks, which means that you probably don't want to be doing the Thieves Guild at all. So it's in kind of a weird place, but in the situations where you have it, it is nice to have. I'm not going to lie. It's nothing special, it's nothing crazy, it is just straightforward and solid. Unlike the next one, which is not entirely straightforward and is convoluted as piss. That would be the Skull of Corruption. This is a unique staff, which there's really not that many of those, is there? It's kind of funny. There's 3 of those in total, I believe. The Skull of Corruption, though, it's rewarded for completing the Waking Nightmare quest, if Erander is killed. And that's an interesting quest. It's kind of short, but it's at least sort of interesting, like vibe-wise, let's say. The Skull of Corruption is not great. If you leave Erander alive, I believe he becomes a follower, and that might be more valuable than this thing. But let's not knock it entirely. It deals a mere 20 points of damage, baseline. What makes it unique is that it increases to 50 if you collect the dreams from sleeping people. You get 5 dreams every time that you collect from someone who is sleeping nearby. Don't cast it at people who are awake, obviously. It's fine. I mean, 50 damage isn't very good, frankly. Is it the worst thing ever? No, but it goes down here. Maybe if you're doing like a Freddy Krueger build, this could come up and be sort of interesting, but outside of that, it's pretty situational at best. You can kind of rush it and do it early, I guess. I don't think it's crazy difficult from what I remember. But even then, like, it's a mere 50 damage is nothing to write home about, frankly. I mean, 50 damage would barely cancel out the health bonus you get from eating people with the Ring of Namira, and it still gives other bonuses. Overall, it's an interesting looking staff, it's a cool mechanic, it's just not quite fleshed out enough. Next up is kind of a similar weapon slash tool, but I think this one's a little bit better. This is Spellbreaker. This is a shield that's it's a unique shield. I think it's the only one that looks like that in the entire game. It's a reward for complete, or is that what Dwemer shields look like? What? Now I can't remember. I'm not going to look it up. Correct me in the comments. I'm just going to live in ignorance for a little bit. Leave me alone. The unique shield is awarded for completing the Only Cure quest, which, while having by far the most boring name that we've had thus far, it is one of my favorite quest lines because people vomit at you and it's gross and awful, and I love it. This is the Periite Daedric artifact. I love Periite because he's considered to be a little bitch by the other Daedric princes, and yeah, he is, and I love that for him. So what makes this an interesting shield is that while it is generally pretty cool, just as a shield, like it's fine as a shield, when you block, it produces a ward that blocks up to 50 points? Yes, 50 points of magic damage. The wiki points out it doesn't work on Steam attacks, which I guess is fair enough. I wouldn't really have expected it to. But overall, as a sword and board guy, having access to a ward effect is pretty interesting, right? Like, that's kind of cool. It is something of a difficult quest line, just because it's in a higher level area, you know, it's over near the Forsworn. And the Vomit Boys, there's a lot of them, alright? Like, it's kind of a brawl down in those Vomit Pits. So I don't know if you can necessarily rush it, but as far as, like, kind of mid-game goes, it's pretty solid. I wouldn't quite say it's incredible. I think that people would probably assault me in the street if I said that. But I'm gonna put it right below the Skeleton Key. I think the Skeleton Key is a little bit better because pretty much any playstyle can benefit from it, even if they don't need to. Whereas only sword and board playstyles and maybe like certain magic users, like paladin playstyles, are going to use a shield. However, having a shield that gives you a spell-only effect is cool. That's unique. I like that. It could be a little bit better in some other ways, being a Daedric artifact, but I do think it's pretty neat. Now, we are almost to the end of the Daedric artifacts. I guess that as a YouTuber, I should remind you to like and subscribe. I'm not going to, though. I'm going to instead talk about what I consider to be the most disappointing and garbage of all of the Daedric artifacts in the game, except the axe. And that is Volendrung, which is at the top of trash tier, the king of the shit pile, as it were. Volendrung is rewarded for completing the Cursed Tribe quest, which is a really cool quest line, by the way. Lots of giants to fight, some cool set pieces, a really unlikable orc that you get to watch get mowed. That's always fun. But all it does is, well, first off, it do be a two-handed hammer, which is cool, I guess. But all it does is absorb 50 points of stamina from enemies that you hit. Now, that's an absorb effect, so that is better than, you know, the axe, because you take that stamina, you use it, which can be cool, but you don't need stamina for power attacks. Like, it just doesn't really matter. You just spam them, or you just don't do power attacks and just spam normal attacks, and you're fine. So the usefulness of this is mediocre at best. It's just a disappointing weapon across the board. I think Volendrung has been kind of disappointing in almost every Elder Scrolls game. I could be wrong about that, so don't quote me, or do quote me, but at least put in a comment for me. So, Volendrung is the one that I hate the most, even more than this axe, which I forgot existed. And the reason is because I really like the orcs and the orc tribes and how they're handled in Skyrim. I think it's one of the handful of things that they did that was a cool innovation in Skyrim, story-wise. And it was really disappointing to get to the end of an orc stronghold quest line, and my great reward to be something so incredibly mid. It looks pretty cool. It don't act very cool, though. But with that, let's move on to the final Daedric artifact in the game, the Wabbajack. Now, the Wabbajack is a reward. It is the final unique staff, of course, that is rewarded for completing the Mind of Madness quest. This quest is pretty involved and has a lot of dialogue and some like story-ish elements to it. I think a lot of people really like it. I think it's okay. I've done it too many times. After the first time you do it, it starts to lose its luster, I think. But when it first came out, a lot of people really enjoyed it. Either way, it has a bunch of random effects, and I'm not going to like go through all of them. But we can kind of do the summarized version here. When you cast this at a target, it will either do a random spell effect, instantly kill the target, heal the target, or turn the target into something random, which can vary from creatures to items. One of which I think is it can occasionally just turn them into money, which is sort of funny. Overall, the Wabbajack is a fun item to use, again, for the same reason as Mehrunes Razor. But I think that it is a little bit worse. No. I think it's a little bit better, honestly. Because, you know, it occasionally will spit out non-healing effects. I just feel like if it were me using the Wabbajack, I'd get 5 heals in a row. Then it would be like one pathetic spell effect that lights the enemy on fire for 2 damage, and then another heal immediately after. But I don't think that's typical. I think that generally the Wabbajack will help you in combat at least a little bit. But the general silliness of it does keep it from being any higher than this. It's just not great. You know, it is intentionally not an incredible item, is what I'll say. It is designed to be maybe not a meme, but meme adjacent. It's supposed to be a bit silly and mostly just for fun, and I can respect that. I enjoy that. So, there you guys go. That's my tier list. It's pretty even, honestly. Most of them fit into the good category. They're at least usably okay. And we have a handful that are absolutely incredible. And then we have a decent number that are in pretty mid or trash, which is always sad to see, of course, but, you know, it is what it is. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'll be doing some more Skyrim tier lists in the future, alongside the continuation of Chandler's playthrough, which, again, you should go and check out. And if you like this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Especially subscribe if you want to see more of these tier lists for Skyrim, but also other games. I'm probably going to do some other Elder Scrolls stuff as well. And I do some DRG tier lists, which I gotta finish very soon. But yeah, until next time, like I said, thank you guys for your support of the channel and these videos. Love making them. Love having you guys respond to them. And until next time, peace.